Welcome back, friends. Today we're going to be reviewing the BRRR token from Burrow Finance. On this video, we're going to look at a bunch of things to determine whether it is a yay or a nay, a buy or a dump. This is a token that I've been following for a long time. I've actually been accumulating, which is why it's a special video for me. This is a moment when I try to determine whether I cut my losses or I double down. Of course, everything in this video is just for information and entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research. Okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump in. I would encourage everyone to stay till the end because I've spent weeks researching this one, and I think that there may be a bit of an information arbitrage and maybe even, who knows, an activity for token holder activism. First of all, what is Burrow Finance? Burrow Finance is a lending protocol on Near. If you're familiar with lending protocols, it is similar to Avi or Compound in other ecosystems. Very simple. You can deposit your assets as collateral and earn interest on them, and you can borrow assets against your collateral. So a normal play would be provide ST Near, borrow stablecoins. Where is the Burrow token today? We're in Dex Screener, and the Burrow token is not doing that well. For a protocol of $280 million in TVL supplied and almost $50 million in borrowed assets, it has barely a market cap of 3 million with a fully diluted valuation of 5 million. These numbers will be relevant in just 1 minute when we dive into the tokenomics. Looking into the charts for a bit, we can see that the price had been trending up, and now it is less than half the price than 2 months ago. So what has been happening along the way? Some of it would be broader market weakness with some of the crazy dumps. I personally had to sell some BRRR to add collateral on Burrow, ironically, to stop being liquidated. But also, I have identified a culprit. So every time that we see the price going up a little bit, there seems to be one whale that still has around 18 million BRRR, and he or she have been dumping in $10,000 lots. So that would be this big red candle we see here. That to me represents an opportunity. I actually like it when whales dump earlier. And just keep in mind that number, he's got about $90,000 worth of BRRR ready to dump, assuming he will dump at all, because we'll be looking at some of the market forces in just a minute. So with this overview of what BRRR is and the current sad state of the token, let's jump into the tokenomics. The token didn't really do that much for a long time, and about 6 months ago, which is interesting, we'll do a review of how this plan is going. The team announced a new tokenomics incentive, including a buyback. At the time, the buyback included 3 stages, including stage 1, buy of funds. It will be using up to 60% of the earnings from stablecoins. Let's mark that one. We're going to have to double click to clarify some things. To use buyback BRRR on stage 2, they're going to increase the interval between the buybacks up to maximum of 1 per day. We'll be looking into the blockchain to see what's happening here. And stage 3, where things start getting dubious if you ask me, they're going to decrease the amount of buyback funds to a minimum of 20% of earnings. From the tokens that are being bought back, it is going to be distributed as such. 50% to be locked in a contract for 2 years to be used by the team later on. 30% for rewards on ref and borrow, and 20% to be burned. The bit where I want to double click is the source of the funds to be used to buy tokens. So on this tweet from November 30th, 2023, the token deflation plan will happen over 6 months. We're actually at the 6-month mark from that tweet. During that time, 0 BRRR emissions, and with the token buyback scheme utilizing, this is a key line, utilizing protocol and Treasury's generated fees. Those are 2 separate things. And on the next tweet, there's a bit more clarification. Buyback of funds, extract 60% of earnings from Burrow stablecoins as buyback funds. The reason why I'm making an emphasis on these things is because when we look at where the money comes from, there's actually 2 really interesting things. So the first one is the protocol fees. The protocol fees refers to the spread between the borrow percentage. This would be the interest that borrowers pay to the protocol to borrow assets. So for instance, Frax Finance will be paying 2.44% to borrow. The deposit interest that lenders receive. So for the same asset, Frax Finance, it would be 0.60%. That spread, which would be just under 2%, is what the protocol receives at fees. I've created a very simple spreadsheet where I calculate the spread for every asset. USDT 386%, 153%. I guess it's around the 2% for all of them, and the total borrowed for each asset. So you can do some maths and roughly calculate how much is a protocol earning. The second thing, which is most interesting and many people may not know, is Treasury revenue. If we go to our good old mate Spike Peak, we can see the Burrow team has actually deposited into the protocol a bunch of stablecoins that are earning interest. If we scroll down, we can see that the Burrow DAO has deposited roughly 380,000 of each one of the stablecoins, adding up to over $1.8 million. Now, that may be a small amount. I don't know, depends how rich you are. But $1.8 million when you look at these very juicy APYs, both boosted, which would be earning a lot in near, and in native yield, which would be earning in stables. And here, my friends, is where we enter into the plot twist section of the video. Why am I calling it a plot twist? Easy, because the Burrow team communications are really mild. If we go to their Medium, there hasn't been a new blog post since the buyback was announced on November 30th. A series of tweets announcing buybacks. There's one here on March 14th. They bought, it doesn't even say how much money they bought. And then there's one here from April saying they bought just under $6,000 worth of USDC of BRRRR tokens. It doesn't say how much it burned. But for these tweets, which can very easily be lost on people's timeline, there hasn't really been much official communication. But if you've been paying attention, you would know that about 2 or 3 months ago, something wild started happening on Near DeFi. Namely, the TVL of Burrow, I'm pretty sure, has more than doubled. It's been at least 140 million. So what's happening? And you can probably see the cheat code here in the bottom right corner. There have been massive incentives injected into Burrow Finance to match the introduction of native USDT, USDC, and Frax. So this top bracket here of the protocol was not there before. There's been close to $30 million of USDC and USDT each, plus almost $3 million of Frax. Who knows where this money is coming from? Mysterious. The point is that now not only is the protocol Treasury earning 20% in near on its own assets, but what matters the most is, look at how much money has been borrowed. Just over the last couple of months, the protocol is now earning protocol fees on over $3 million, give or take. These are all fresh, juicy assets that were not there before. So my simple analysis is, how can the token be worth the same when the amount of the assets of the protocol is earning revenue has grown exponentially? Oh, just for reference, before it was only earning in USDC and USDT, and look at that. Those numbers may have changed slightly, but they were not that much different. They were only earning on 5.18 mil USDC, 3.68 mil USDT, 2.94 mil DAI. These are baby numbers. This is an embarrassment for the only DeFi lending protocol on Near, which is why I suspect someone's pumping all the money into Burrow, and I personally believe the token is not reflecting this yet. So, to recap, there's been a monumental increase in the assets being injected into Ref. There's been a monumental increase in the assets that the protocol is earning revenue on, and the protocol has its own assets deposited in, which are also benefiting from the near rewards. Let's move into the Stalking Corner. This is my favorite part of the video, or how I call it sometimes, where the fuck is the money? So here we have Astra++. I will link this one in the show notes as everything that I've referenced. This is a very handy page where you can find any and all Sputnik DAOs in the ecosystem. They are by default ranked by the size of the Treasury. And we can see that Burrow Finance is not too far down the list with a couple $1 million in it. Going into Burrow Finance, we start to see the juicy goodness. We can look at all the proposals, including most recently Alpha. This has not been tweeted yet, I'm pretty sure. They've added Ethereum into the tokens that receive near rewards. This is why we can see that ETH now has a whopping 20%, much better than staking ETH, if you ask me. Probably a sneaky move to attract the Ethereum community and get them a chunky piece of near. But if we keep scrolling down, we can see these are the near rewards being deposited in. And what we're looking for is, here we go, proposal to apply stablecoin for buyback for the month of May. We have over 2,000 DAI. We can keep scrolling down and get all the amounts. 4,225 USDC, 4,000 USDT. Party keeps going. 5,000 USDC. As I just analyzed 4,200 USDT, we are already looking at 4 times the buyback amount than the previous month. And there's something here that I'm not entirely sure I understand what it means, but they're also put protocol fee DAI back to reserve. So some of the money that they're earning is going back into the reserve. So this protocol is printing money. I've got some questions here. Maybe the whole thing should be used to buy BRRR, but it is what it is. Another way to understand what is going on is to track some of these addresses directly on PikeSpeak. So I have taken borrow.sputnik-DAO into PikeSpeak, and we can navigate much better what's going on. And from these PikeSpeak plays, I have identified a couple of things. The first one is the BuyBack Address. It's not that creatively, and perhaps it should not have been that hard to find it. buyback.ref-labs.near is where all the buybacks are happening. And we can see that right now, there are buybacks that have been programmed can you tell that I'm excited? Every 4 hours for roughly the same amount, just over $100 each. And we can see all these accumulating in this account. And how much money, you may be asking, this account has to perform buybacks? It's got $14,000 left, more than that well dumped 10,000. So if you ask me, I am personally trying to get in before those 14,000 go in. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to do a really quick pretend swap for roughly the same amount than the bot is buying. What I want to highlight is just over $100 swap results in a price impact of 0.67% near. This just goes to show that the BRRR pool is actually relatively shallow, only $253,000. Oh, look at that. The second largest BRRR pool is my pool, AVB BRRR, with $1,500. Jesus, I must be copying some incredible impermanent loss there. And if we compare that with Rev has over $3 million in TVL. So the BRRR pool could definitely go a long way. But for now, what we need to know is that even relatively small buys can have an impact in price. And they're $14,000. They're ready to be bought back. The other interesting thing that I found out is if you go to the history, let's filter the transactions by function transfers. Okay, so we can see the $19,000 coming in. That must have already bought 5,000, 14,000 left. And we can see the way that the BRRR that is bought back has been distributed. 50% has been sent to the Burrow DAO to be locked for 2 years. Another 365% has been sent to the address reward proxy ref labs. I'm looking at the address just by hovering over it, and right in the corner, it must be tiny on the video, but if you click on PikeSpeak, it will open a new window and you can see in more detail. So the reward proxy ref labs currently has 2.6 million near, and most exciting for me, the 253,000 or 20% were sent to the BRRR address, which has creatively been called blackhole.ref-labs.near. So far to date, there's been 1.74 million BRRR burned. Normally, the BRRR address on Near Protocol is 64 digits, all zeros. You can look it up and amuse yourself with all the shit that has been sent there. But this address has been more clearly labeled as the BRRR address, and we can know that it is a BRRR address because if we look at the history of the transactions, there are the BRRR transactions coming in from the BuyBack address, but most importantly, what we really want to look for is the transactions that this account have performed. It's taking a long time to load, but what you would see down here is the transaction when the account was created and the transaction that eliminates the only private key. That way we know that this account does not have any private key, so anything sent to this account will never be able to be retrieved by anyone. Now, this is all fun and games, but I've got a spreadsheet, which is when you know that things are getting real. So this spreadsheet was last updated a couple of weeks ago, so some of these numbers may have changed, but I think they've only really changed upwards. So take it with a grain of salt. Maybe I can share this spreadsheet on the comment section and you can copy it if you want to run some numbers yourself. But what I've done is on the first section for protocol reserve, I've included all the assets from the Burrow DAO, the Burrow Treasury, that have been deposited back into the protocol and are currently generating some sort of revenue. The first row has the APY. This APY is the real depositor's APY paid in the native currency. So we've got USDT, USDC, just over 2%. Let's go to Burrow. Let's see how much that is today. Yep, this one has come down a little bit. I guess people started paying their USDT loans because we're getting liquidated. And then next to it, we've got net APY from that interest rate. The Y stands for yearly, the M for monthly. And then from F onwards, we've got the rewards APY. This is paid in near. We've got the amount of near that the protocol stands to receive on a yearly basis, the amount of near that the protocol stands to receive on a monthly basis, and the amount of dollars as of this day. The price of near has actually gone up a little bit. It's just over 7 as of the time of recording. All we need to know is the green cells have the monthly amount of revenue in dollar terms that the Burrow Treasury, these are approximates, is receiving. Just from Burrow's own assets, we're looking at over 32,000 US. Noteworthy, more 2/3 of it is from the near rewards, and these near rewards did not exist at the time that the original BuyBack blog post was mentioned, so there really is no mention on how these near rewards are going to be spent. I am assuming, and there should be a public campaign, we should boycott Burrow. I'm not sure how because there's no other lending protocols, but we should boycott them to make sure that the near rewards that the Treasury is earning are also used for rewards. Looking at the protocol revenue, this is where it gets crazy. I mentioned that only USDC, USDT, and DAI were around for a while. So that would have only been 42,000 per month. 20% of that is, I can't do maths. And then for the protocol revenue, likewise, I take every asset, and the spread here would be the difference between, as I mentioned before, of the APY that the depositors pay and the APY that is paid out to the lenders. And then I put in the actual amounts borrowed. As I mentioned, some of these numbers may have changed since I created this spreadsheet. And long story short, what we can see is the revenue from fees per month. Even if we were to exclude ETH, BTC, and NEAR, it's only a tiny amount. Maybe ETH will grow with the new rewards. But we're still looking at $100,000 in monthly revenue. And with these, friends, I get to my main point. Doing simple maths, it seems like Burrow has been taking the protocol fee only from stablecoins, and 6 months later, they're only using 20% of the protocol fee revenue, which would match quite closely, give or take. They've transferred $19,000. I've got just over $100,000 in revenue. And this would take us to the next section, constructive alpha. I would argue that after 6 months of this plan, we can probably say that it has not been successful. The price of BRRR is the same, if not lower, than when we started. And a big part here is communications. The DAO conducting buybacks cannot do all the heavy lifting. We have to communicate to people like myself what is happening, and maybe that will inspire trust in the project and the protocol and may lead to people buying the token, or it may just have the opposite effect, and it is probably reflected in that whale dumping chunks of $10,000 at a time. In my opinion, decreasing the amount of the buybacks to 20%, I don't understand it. I think it reflects poorly on the team. They come across as greedy. It has not been communicated that it's decreased from 60% to 20%, especially the decrease happening at a time when the protocol is thriving. Even with the decrease from 60% to 20%, we're already seeing a 4x increase in the amount of BRRR that is going to be bought. I understand that if they were to do 60% of these revenue would be $60,000 and the entire pool is $253,000. So it would have a big impact on price, but I thought that was the point. And that is not even touching the actual protocol reserves. I think these were the fees that we saw on the DAO that were reintroduced to the reserves. So I believe this is compounding, but looking at Pike speak, we can confirm that the Treasury is earning near rewards. There's just under $4,000 there waiting to be claimed. So the second point would be around creating some new communications, reminding or further exploring the percentage of the buybacks, assessing the success of the current strategy, and maybe clarifying what will happen with the near being earned from the treasuries. And then the third piece of feedback would be, let's bring staking back. Give us a reason to believe that the BRRR token will be able to capture the value and the growth of the protocol. At the moment, it's not entirely clear that it will be able to do so, but we can see that the potential is there. My final reflection is that whoever put all this crazy money into Burrow can very easily withdraw it and deposit it into a new lending protocol. And I think it's only a matter of time before we have more competition on the lending protocol side. So regardless of what the numbers say and what you've seen on the screen and whether you think this is exciting or not, at the end of the day, when you do your own research, you should always take into account the team's actual execution. Friends, I feel like this was a long one, but it was a chunky one. I've been trying to get this off my chest for a long time. Disclaimer, again, I keep accumulating BRRR. I think that it is a no-brainer, even with the current 20%, which I really do hope it gets revised. And I'm in for the long ride. So do your own research. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.